How is Fort Collins, Colorado doing according to Fort Collins, Colorado citizens? Every year, the city of Fort Collins administers a survey to its citizens asking how are they doing and about a lot of different information. And that's what today's video is going to talk to you about. Overall quality of life, safety, parks, trails, the future prospects of Fort Collins. All of that is going to be discussed in today's video. My name is Patrick Soukup. This is the Living in Fort Collins YouTube channel. If you are new to the channel, we talk to you about everything there is to know about Northern Colorado, eating, sleeping, playing, and how Fort Collins is doing according to its citizens. So at the end of the video, if you've enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, share it, comment, engage. Now, we are licensed real estate agents in the state of Colorado. So if you are considering a move to Northern Colorado, give us a call, text, or email. Without any further delay, let's jump into today's video. Let's go. All right, so this survey is the 14th iteration, and there was 3,000 randomly selected mailers sent out to its citizens, and 18% of people responded, which apparently is statistically valid and a scientific approach. The city of Fort Collins actually hires a third-party survey company to administer this survey and provide its results. And we've been doing this since 2013. So there's some good historical data to compare against. On top of the 529 mail-in surveys that were responded, additionally, they sent out an email questionnaire and got an additional 400 or so responses back. And because the answers correlated enough, they could include those into this scientific approach. So we are going to jump in and start off with the quality of life in Fort Collins. Now, Fort Collins as an overall place to live still has 89% of its respondents saying that yes, it's a great place to live. But according to this 2013, there was 97% of respondents said that it was a great place to live. So a little bit less, but definitely a strong response saying that yes, Fort Collins is a great place to live. 84% of people suggest that this is a great place to raise children, and 70% believe that Fort Collins has a good quality of public schools. Now, a couple of areas where we lack is availability of affordable childcare and availability of affordable housing. Definitely areas that Fort Collins, I'm not sure if they're ever going to necessarily be able to address, as it's such a good place to live. 87% saying it's a good quality of life living here. 70% saying that good public schools. So it's a desirable place to live, meaning that more people are moving here, there's strong demand, and well, supply just isn't necessarily there for the housing. And we do need professional tradespeople, doctors, lawyers, attorneys, accountants, childcare facilities. We just talked with a client that moved here from Austin, Texas, or the area around Austin, Texas, and I think they're gonna do amazing things with, they bought a franchise and are opening it up here. It is a kitchen and bathroom remodeling business, and I'm like, I think you guys are gonna crush it because there's not a ton of trades or services here, so it gets pinched on the affordability side of things. If there's only so many places for your kid to get childcare, that place is gonna have to increase its prices kind of necessarily to hedge against how many people wanna get in there. They don't have to raise their prices, but generally speaking, it's a way of diminishing some demand. Now, speaking of tradespeople and services, how are people taking care of their properties? How's the property maintenance? And actually only about 58% of people said that it was either good or very good in regards to the property maintenance and property upkeep. Now, it's interesting to consider who exactly these respondents are because, you know, what I'm seeing is depending on the certain area of town could determine the property maintenance and upkeep. So that we will discuss at the end is who actually were the response people of these surveys and online responses. Now, when people move to Fort Collins, they move here generally speaking for a lifestyle design. So they wanna be outdoors, they wanna enjoy our parks, our trails, hiking, biking, skiing, all that kind of stuff. And so one of the questions was, how often or are you using the parks or city parks? And 95% of people are suggesting that yes, they are using those amenities within Fort Collins. Now, Fort Collins is built off of so many years of hardworking individuals, of intentional planning, city planning, but one of the big things that makes Fort Collins great is how people are pouring back into the community. How can they give back? How can they pick up trash off the curbs and gutters? And one of the questions is how many people have volunteered within Fort Collins? And I think this number could definitely increase. It's currently sitting at about 54%, down from 58% in 2013. So we're gonna have a strong push for our volunteer work. My team, Soukup Real Estate, jumped into the mission here in Fort Collins just recently and volunteered some of our time, and we're looking forward to doing more of that as the years go. Now here was the interesting one, because as we'll get further, one of the things that people think needs to be addressed is our policing and our services, because it's interesting to see that how many people feel safe within their neighborhood comes in at a 96%. Now, that's pretty solid if you ask me, and one of the things, theories that I'll talk about here shortly is my thought of people feeling safe and the thought that maybe our policing needs work. But then when we talk about our budgetary demands not necessarily needing to be the police, it's saying that health, or that the safety of the community is strong enough that we shouldn't necessarily put too much attention there because it's already good. Now here's something interesting. We are Old Town Fort Collins, historic Old Town Fort Collins. Walt Disney got some of their inspirations. Harper Goff brought them to Disneyland. And so you are going to go down to downtown Fort Collins. And how do you feel safe there? I've always suggested that I would want to walk or feel fine walking with and around with my kids during the day and up to roughly probably 12 o'clock at night. But the answer respondents were downtown during the day, 92% of people felt safe, versus downtown at night, only 60% of the people felt safe. So for me, again, I probably wouldn't necessarily like volunteer or take my kids out probably past 10 o'clock, well, because it's their bedtime around 7:30 or 8. But that being said, I've been in and around downtown at all different times of the years, and I don't necessarily find it too concerning. But I could see, well, hey, like it just takes one chance, one opportunity for, something bad to happen. So why put yourself into that situation? But downtown Fort Collins is extremely safe during the day, in my opinion, at night as well. All right, now we got into some rating of the quality of areas within Fort Collins, and our parks and recreation scores very well. Again, this is Fort Collins. We're very intentional about our open spaces, very intentional about our trails, hiking, biking. We spend a lot of time and it's really world class. 88% of people think that it's good or very good. Now our police services overall, crime prevention, both score right around 50%, which again, not the best of scores, which is really kind of interesting because we're gonna get down to it here shortly of where we should spend our dollars, but also who feels safe in their neighborhood, who feels safe downtown, but yet they feel that maybe there's some crime prevention, police services that could do better. So I would wanna get a little bit more information on that, but we'll jump into the budgetary focuses here shortly. Now, transportation in Fort Collins is huge. We are a suburban community, and ultimately, you're probably gonna need to own at least one car, but probably two cars if you're on the south side of town, especially if you're needing to commute to work. Now, the availability of biking and bike trails and accessibility of commuting by biking is strong. 83% suggest that it's either good or very good as far as bike transportation. But only 26% of people think that Fort Collins is good or very good as far as the electric charging stations for electric vehicles, which actually Fort Collins, I think, comparatively does very well. So again, this is a survey based on people who live in Fort Collins of its citizens. And I think perspective is a big issue here because my understanding is Fort Collins is actually like really, really strong as far as its charging stations, especially per capita. And again, we're gonna have a juxtaposition here. Air quality versus the overall aesthetics of the city. Our air quality, in Fort Collins is definitely something that you could look up, and I think City of Fort Collins is addressing it head on, but only 53% believe that the air quality in Fort Collins in Northern Colorado is good or very good. I bet you it's gonna get stronger because we do have gas emissions that we're trying to reduce by 2030 with a carbon zero footprint by 2050. So I bet you that we're gonna do pretty well on this overall in the next few years, but something that we have to address and know that is an issue considering Fort Collins citizens. But the overall appearance of the city, and this is where I think Fort Collins does extremely well, and perspective does probably limit as well here because people don't go down to Denver or spend a lot of time maybe in Longmont or Loveland. But I can tell you, when you come into Fort Collins, the canopy of the trees, the eye line with the utilities underground, no billboards. This is a beautiful city, and I absolutely agree with the City of Fort Collins citizens' response there. And we'll do another juxtaposition here, where I think one of the major economies in Fort Collins, I know, is healthcare, health services. So our availability of affordable healthcare is strong. About 70% of people saying it's good or very good. But our job opportunities here, we are a growing community with economic opportunities coming. They're kind of trailing behind. We've had good residential growth over the last, 20 or so years. And I think the commercial opportunities are just starting to make their way here. But as of right now, the economic job opportunities, according to the citizens of Fort Collins, only ranks at about 37% of good or very good. Now, it's not a shocker that these two rankings came in pretty strong, above 80%, of people who plan to remain in Fort Collins for the next 5 years and also recommend Fort Collins to others. Both coming in over 80% and have been at that number for many years. I think talking with a lot of clients who have either moved here or folks that are staying here, Fort Collins does it right. And while yes, there are some things that we need to do better, air quality, affordable housing, affordable childcare, overall, it's a pretty phenomenal place. And I think people ultimately realize that. Now, when people move here, they're going to be reliant upon our utility system and our internet. And both of those rank above 70%, suggesting that yes, our quality of utilities is there, it's strong, water, natural gas, electric, and then our internet, it's a fiber internet, and above 70% of people are happy with connections and would recommend it to others. I myself am on Fort Collins Connections. I love it. I think it's a great utility and tool for citizens of Fort Collins, especially for those remote workers. Now, we are going to talk about what the budget, responsibility should be according to the citizens of Fort Collins. And a lot of it's going to be neighborhood, sustainability, and affordability. That is probably the biggest issue that Fort Collins citizens wants to address. And then in descending order, environment, transportation, economy, culture, parks and rec. Then we got safety. 29% of people think that should be a focus of ours as far as budgetary focus. And again, that's where it's interesting to see that maybe our policing services and things of that nature are a concern, but yet our safety should be, fourth or fifth on the list as far as a priority. So it tells me that City of Fort Collins citizens are actually probably pretty safe. And then general government is the last budgetary focus. And because this is such a long list, I'm gonna actually grab it, look down. So I'm sorry I'm not looking you in the face. But that being said, I wanna talk to you about the focus of the community members. All right, number 1, housing costs and affordability. 2, transportation improvements, mobility paths and trails, 11%. Traffic, roads and parking. Government policies, spending, services delivery. Environmental issues, sustainability. Cost of living, economy and jobs at 6%. Homelessness at 6%. Growth and development, retail amenities, 5%. Neighborhood livability, our 15-minute communities, 4%. Safety, crime, policing, 4%. Less growth development issues related to growth planning and zoning, 4%. Recreation, parks and open space, 3%. Diversity, equality, equity and inclusion. Community events, groups, activities. Northern Colorado Regional Airport options, other and not applicable. Now again, that is the community members' priorities. Thinking about the next few years, what is the one item of focus area you would like the city to improve on? That was in descending order, with housing cost of affordability coming in number 1 at 26%. And again, I want to get these numbers exactly right, so I'm gonna look down at what my notes say, but here's the characteristics of the respondents. Now, how long have you lived in Fort Collins? It was actually relatively evenly distributed, but 31% had lived here for more than 20 years, while 21% had lived here for 2 to 5 years, and then the rest are relatively evenly distributed, but 12% had only lived here for less than 2 years. All right, are you a full-time or part-time student? 92% were not students, so they live here year-round. As far as the individuals responding to this survey, 35% were 25 to 34-year-olds. Makes sense. Fort Collins' median age in Fort Collins is 29 years old, so that's probably gonna be a heavily weighted answer. Affordability. Big issue for younger folks. They are having a harder time buying and buying later in life. So again, probably something that would be a major concern for that age group. 6%, 75 or older. The next largest group were 35 to 44-year-olds of 20%. Shocker, 85% of the respondents were white. It's a very predominantly white community. But from there, the next largest were Hispanics at 4%. 8% preferred not to respond. And then 3% Asian American, 1% African American Black, 2% American Indian, Alaskan Native. So those were the respondents. As far as the location, who responded? 18% were in the Northwest, 15% in the Northeast, 22% West Central, 21% East Central, 7% in the Southwest, and 17% in the Southeast. That's kind of a breakdown of who were the respondents of this survey and overall what the responses were about living in Fort Collins according to the citizens of Fort Collins. So we've had lots of different videos on here talking about tips of moving here, what people's responses were, what my subjective opinion of pros and cons are, but here was a response from the citizens of Fort Collins, close to 1,000 respondents, scientifically and statistically data relevant. And those answers hopefully give you a little taste of what people in Fort Collins feel about their own community. Now, until next time, thank you very much for watching. Take care.